Hi everyone, welcome to Game Jamming 101. Um, this is going to be mostly a presentation about just what game jams are and how to better prepare for them as we approach Scarlet Game Jam coming up on November 14th, 2021, and also beyond for really any game jam. So first thing we'll talk about is what is a game jam. Um, the whole idea of a game jam is that you have a limited time to create a game. So this time period is variable between multiple game jams. In the terms of Scarlet Game Jam, this will be a week. There are many other formats of game jams out there. Some are 24 hours. There's one game jam that even takes place on daylight savings time, where you create a game in 0 hours, right as the time switch happens. Game jams may or may not have a theme, although I would say it's usually more common to have a theme. This theme is either strictly or loosely enforced. At Scarlet Game Jam, we say it's loosely enforced. We won't force you to follow the theme, but it's really cool and it's a way to keep creative juices flowing. When we talk about a theme, what we mean is that it might be, let's say, a word that can be taken in multiple different ways. So, for example, a theme might be broken, and then as a game designer, you can decide how you want to actually interpret that. Maybe you have a robot that's broken. Maybe it's two people trying to um, fix their relationship. There's a lot of different themes you could go off of based off of that. One theme, but you can use that to create, a really unique game. And it also forces you to be a little creative and maybe not come in with like some kind of canned game concept, but create something on the spot that ends up being really cool and unique, hopefully. And finally, Game Jam is a great place to meet new people and create really cool stuff. Um, in Game Jams, you can, and again, it depends but in Scarlet Game Jam, we absolutely encourage you guys to work in groups, which leads to meeting a lot of cool people who are into the same things you are. And at the end of the day, you're all going to create some really cool stuff. No matter what, when you leave a week to work on a game, obviously you're not expecting a masterpiece, but the final product is something that you're hopefully going to be proud of. So let's talk about the method to actually designing and creating a game in a game jam. It's a little bit different from normal game development because you're on such a time crunch, so you do have to worry about that. First thing you want to do, similar to any game design, is start brainstorming. Um, you're going to make a list of ideas, see which one sticks, which one feels good. Next is moving on to a quick prototype. This is not necessarily the same as regular game design because, again, this prototype needs to be very quick. It's just making sure, will your game work, or are there like truly fundamental flaws in your idea? Um, After that prototype is done, you move on to building the game. Go, build your game. And then when that's done, close to the deadline, when your product is finished or when you're forced to submit, you submit it. Game jams will have different ways to submit. We'll talk about that. But yeah, let's talk about brainstorming. First thing to really think about always is scope. More so than a regular game, scope is incredibly important, an important consideration in a game jam because you have a limited time. A week might seem like a long time, but for Scarlet Game Jam, where we're all students, there's not a week of game jam. It's game jam interspersed throughout a week. Um, when you have a 24-hour game jam, it's 24 hours. That's all. That's it. So your scope has to be something that is manageable. You want to make sure that your scope is reasonable for the time frame given, and you might need to end up cutting out some stuff down down the line, which we'll talk about. But yeah, you're also going to make really quick decisions. You don't have that much time. Don't waste it on planning the perfect game. Um, your game jam experience is going to be much better if you spend most of your time prototyping and building as opposed to planning it all out. Um, for game jams that are really short, 24 hours, etc., you don't have time to plan that much unless you kind of pre-plan your game beforehand. Um, 24 hours or even a week isn't enough to fully design a game. A lot of it is going to have to be based off of a prototype and just, you know, impromptu level design kind of thing, depending on what your game is, obviously. You can have multiple ideas. multiple ideas that you end up simplifying down. So if you have multiple ideas, you might come in with a lot of ideas and you hear a theme. You have multiple ideas that come to mind. Um, Simplify them down. Um, Instead of taking two ideas and combining them, you actually almost want to do the opposite. You want to take one theme, or one idea rather, and then split it up into the smallest portions you can, and then build that. A week is not, again, I'm gonna keep stressing this. A week is not a long time. Do not get over ambitious with this, and it's almost inevitable. You're gonna run out of time. I don't think anyone's ever completed a game jam and being like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to build. But by come up with small ideas, and then if you have time later on, you can add on to it. But yeah, you want to basically find the simplest core of your game. So if you have a platformer, what's the simplest you can make, right? You can have a guy that moves around, runs, maybe an enemy that walks back and forth, you can shoot, and then you can pick something up. That is the simplest crux of your game. And then you can make it unique through maybe like one or two special mechanics. Nothing crazy here. And to go on with that, KISS is a pretty well known acronym for Keep It Simple, Stupid. Um, don't overcomplicate things. It's not what you want in a game jam setting. You want to make something that is, if you want to make something that's unique, make it unique through one unique mechanic, not an entirely unique game. On to prototyping. Uh, After you're done with your brainstorming, immediately start prototyping. Don't be scared to fail on this step. Whenever you make a mistake, if you make a mistake, which you will, roll with it. Can this help? If it can help you, keep it in. Turn it into a feature of your game. Um, but for the most part, if if your prototype isn't working or something, try to salvage as much as you can and just keep moving. You can't stop and be like, oh, this it's over. You don't have time for that. So if your game is turning out to be you're moving too fast, or everything's too fast paced, change the tone of your game, roll with it. um, I'm trying to think of examples off the top of my head. If for some reason you can no longer jump through, you can't make platforms that you can jump through, and you try to make a side scroller platformer, make it a like one screen platformer where everything is a solid object, you can't jump through platforms. Roll with your mistakes, turn it into something cool. Prototyping is really about making sure your game works. So that means get the mechanics down. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about all the fancy level design, all that stuff. You want to make sure that your game is playable. Um, this is the step that's gonna will take up a lot of time, and well, it'll take up a pretty short amount of time. Um, because well, it should take up a short amount of time. It's gonna end up taking a long amount of time. Because you want to get just the basics. You want to make sure your game works. And again, this is where if your core concept is flawed, this is where you pivot. This is where you change. And when I say get the timing right here, I mean this is you want to keep it short, but you also don't want to rush it. You don't want to rush it and then have a game that is like fundamentally flawed. The mechanics don't work at the end. So it's something that you want to go through quickly, but you want to use that time to identify mistakes and fix them and or address them and however you need to. And then once you're done with your prototype, it's on to building. So the actual building of the game. This is the hard part because you got to go fast. At this point, you're probably in Scarlet Game Jam 2 to 3, maybe even later, 4 or 5 days into the game jam. So now it's time to build. Um, this is where you put all of your really development effort. So polishing up those systems from the prototype, starting on level design, getting your artwork in the game, any effects you need, anything like that. You also don't want to stray from your prototype too much. Um, for obvious reasons, again, you don't have that much time. And if your prototype works, if you spent adequate time on your prototyping step, that should be like a very minimal game in itself. In this case, build is just add in, maybe unique stuff, add in cool level design that makes your game cool, whatever you need to do. But you gotta do it fast because at this point you will be running out of time. And then finally, the submitting your game step, which I think is vastly underappreciated. Leave time for this. I put that in all caps. It's important. Um, in your head, you're like, okay, yeah, I'll just keep working on it, and then I'll submit it the last day. And then the last day rolls around, and then what actually ends up happening is you're like, oh, my game is nowhere near complete. I'm gonna work up until 2 minutes before I have the submission deadline, and then I'm gonna turn it in then. Don't do that. That is the fastest way to just not submit anything at all. um, it re- Depending on the submission method of the game jam you're at. For example, Scarlet Game Jam, I'm not sure if this is 100% set in stone, but going to be turning in through itch.io. Um, Take a moment to learn how to do this. You can do that before the game jam if like that information is available, or do it at the beginning of the game jam. Know how to submit your game. The What you don't want to do is wait until the very last minute and then and then realize, oh, I have to submit my game, and then you don't know how to. Some game jams have very specific rules on what you need to do. You need to package your code a certain way or whatnot. You want to know that going into the game jam and before you submit it. Trying to learn all that and then restructure things that aren't working or whatever within 2 minutes or however much time you give yourself at the end is not going to be sufficient, and it's going to be very stressful. You don't want to get stuck at this step. And once you submit, right? Once you've already learned, you left yourself adequate time. You left yourself an hour, let's say, to get everything submitted. You've submitted well before the deadline, so you're good. Take a breath. You're done. Congratulations, you just completed a game jam. So, just want to talk about some game jams that we do with COG specifically. Scarlet Game Jam. It's happening this Sunday. That's November 14th, 2021. For anyone watching this later. And we usually do it every semester. So there'll be one in spring semester and so on. Scarlet Game Jam, again, is a week long. We don't keep you in one place. There's a kind of kickoff event and then a final event, showcase event. So most of the time is really on your own schedule with your group wherever they are. Second one we host occasionally is Global Game Jam, which is usually every January-ish. That one is we are one site of the game jam. It's not specific to COGS. Scarlet Game Jam is. Global Game Jam is, well, global. We are one like location for that. More information will be given out about that as we approach. That's pretty much all there is to game jamming. Quote unquote all there is. It's really about making sure that you get your steps down. Make sure you're brainstorming quickly, prototyping quickly, building quickly, and submitting quickly. You can see there's a big emphasis on quickly there. But the one advice I would give, the most important advice in my opinion, is keeping it simple. Again, focus on basic mechanics and then throw in one mechanic to make it interesting. For example, if your game is like a platformer and then your unique mechanic is maybe your mouse position, you can use it to. It's like a physical object, your mouse, so you can move it around and press buttons with it and stuff. If you're going to do that, make sure that the platforming aspect is very simple. If you're using Unity, for example, we really like that here at COGS. Throw on a rigid body, throw on some forces. You should have a movement controller down in no time. It should take 2 hours maximum. And then you can worry about the crazy, unique mechanic later. But that's what prototyping's for. Make sure it's possible. Make sure you can do all that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for game jamming. I look forward to seeing everyone at Scarlet Game Jam fall 2021. If anyone's watching this in the future, I hope you decide to join some game jam and have a good time and make some cool stuff. Thank you. See you guys at Scarlet Game Jam.